Brigham Young wrote a public statement in September of 1845 which read, "We propose to leave this county next spring." He continued, listen to this, "We will go to a land where there are at least no old settlers to quarrel with us. We will leave this wicked nation to themselves, for they have rejected the gospel, and I hope and pray that the wicked will kill one another and save us the trouble of doing it." End quote. This is a direct quote from the journal of LDS prophet Heber C. Kimball. Murder, revenge, bloodshed, and violence was at the very heart of the man who settled Utah Mormonism. For Joseph, it was deception. That Utah was the first state in the Union to execute someone. Gary Gilmore, they did it by firing squad so as to shed his own blood in order that he himself may atone for his unforgivable sins, which Mormons believe the blood of Jesus could not do. Amazing, huh? Now, these violent actions in Nauvoo were primarily carried out by a group of men collectively known as Danites. This one is Porter Rockwell, Joseph Smith's childhood friend. Joseph Smith promised him that if he never cut his hair, he wouldn't be killed, and he never did. He was known as the Avenging Angel or Angel of Death. He killed many men. He was a ruthless killer, and he came out here to Utah and continued on his henchman activities for Brigham Young. The next picture, this is Alan Stout. I can't remember if this is Alan or Hosea. And he was the either the one of the policemen in Nauvoo or the actual head of the Nauvoo Police Department. Next one. And this was either Hosea. I think this one is Hosea. And he was a bloody butcher as well. Bottom line, these men were ruthless murderers who would and did almost anything Brigham Young told them to do, both in Nauvoo and in Utah.
I was one of the ones that refused to fall into that, and I chose my own husband. And married and had a very loving relationship for 15 years. And until I lost him through this blood atonement process.
Blood atonement teaches that there are some sins that God cannot forgive by the works of Calvary, and therefore the sinner must have his own blood spilled. This blasphemous doctrine not only diminishes the power and the purpose of Christ's blood, but glorifies the atoning power of the blood of the Mormon sinner. While steadfastly observed by Mormon fundamentalists, this anti-Christian principle originated with Joseph Smith and was furthered by later Mormon prophets. This troublesome doctrine of blood atonement blemishes the wholesome public image required by Mormonism's leaders. Today, the brethren in Salt Lake City still grapple over the predicament they find themselves in when having to both affirm and deny blood atonement. For example, the late Mormon apostle Bruce R. McConkie, in his book Mormon Doctrine, denied that the church ever practiced or taught blood atonement. Yet on the same page, stated that because the blood of Christ is not sufficient to forgive certain sins, the Mormon God requires man to have his own blood spilled.
On the 27th of June, we were carrying on our life as usual, and happened to be the 144th anniversary of the martyrdom of Joseph Smith. My half-brothers came into our office and murdered my husband. At the same time, there were 3 other consecutive deaths going on. My brother-in-law, Dwayne, and his 8-year-old daughter, Jenny, was with him, and they also killed her. Our names were on the list of to be atoned for. My father believed that we were traitors to God's cause and that our blood must be shed to atone for the sin of turning against light knowledge, as he supposed.
Blood atonement is if you have charity enough for someone to save them, the shedding of their blood is the only way that they can atone for certain sins.
People really thought they were doing a favor in my great-grandfather's day to shed the blood, save their soul, and it's still taking place today. My great-grandfather John D. Lee was one of the Mormon men who were called avenging angels, or destroying angels. It was their duty, their obligation, to cut the throats, shed the blood of people who were apostate Mormons, who were guilty of speaking against the authorities.
Jesus shed his blood that as an infinite sacrifice, but there are some sins that the blood of Jesus cannot atone for, and therefore it requires the shedding of that man's blood to atone.
For adultery, for apostasy, for marriage to a Negro, for not receiving the gospel, for lying, for any of the other offenses, they'd have to have their own blood shed to have forgiveness of sin.
To put it simply, my father's beliefs stem directly from Mormonism. Not one thing is different than what the early Mormon doctrine is.
The original doctrine that Joseph Smith and Brigham Young taught is exactly what I believe. I'm now at present baptizing people, and I have 5 apostles now, and we're out teaching and preaching the gospel, trying to get the Mormons into the original doctrine that Brigham and Joseph had it set on. And I refuse to give it up. I've been cast out of the Mormon church because of it.
That's the reason why today people are still killing each other, shedding the blood so they can have forgiveness of sin. And it comes directly from Joseph Smith and from Brigham Young.
There's been 27 murders since 1972. My uncle, my sister, my brother Arthur. My brother committed suicide, which is a direct consequence of all of this. I would just like you to know that if anything happens to me, ever, or to my children, I will personally, I believe the Mormon Church in general will be responsible, because the very doctrine of blood atonement stems from Mormonism.
Governor Romney, when President Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act into law, he enacted a provision allowing him to indefinitely detain American citizens in U.S. military custody. Many, including Congressman Paul, have called this unconstitutional. At the same time, the bill did provide money to continue funding U.S. troops. Governor Romney, as president, would you have signed the National Defense Act as written?
Yes, I would have, and I do believe that it's appropriate to have in our nation the capacity to detain people who are threats to this country, who are members of Al-Qaeda. Look, you have every right in this country to protest and to express your views on a wide range of issues, but you don't have a right to join a group that has challenged America and has threatened killing Americans, has killed Americans, and has declared war against America. That's treason. And in this country, we have a right to take those people and put them in jail. And I recognize that when you're in a setting when there are enemy combatants, and some of them on our own soil, that could possibly be abused. There are a lot of things I think this president does wrong, lots of them. But I don't think he's going to abuse this power, and I know that if I were president, I would not abuse this power. And I can also tell you that in my view, you have to choose people who you believe have sufficient character not to abuse the power of the presidency and to make sure that we do not violate our constitutional principles. But let me tell you, people who join Al-Qaeda are not entitled to the rights of due process under our normal legal code. They are entitled instead to be treated as enemy combatants.
Senator Santorum.
I mean, I still got time. So as long as I still have time, I just want to go back and agree with what Governor Perry said. The most extraordinary thing that's happened with this military authorization is the president's planning on cutting $1 trillion out of military spending. Our Navy is smaller than it's been since 1917. Our Air Force is smaller and older than any time since 1947. We're cutting our number of troops. We're not giving our veterans the care they deserve. We simply cannot continue to cut our Department of Defense budget if we're going to remain the hope of the earth, and I will fight to make sure America retains military superiority.